Is there any way in the world that we could stop mass shootings in America? Well, honestly, I'm a little skeptical, but our next guest is going to try to show me a little bit of hope here. So it's Mark Fullman. He's written the book, Trigger Points Inside the Mission to Stop Mass Shootings in America. Mark, welcome to the program.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Mark, let's do it. You tell me how in the world we're going to stop these mass shootings, because I don't see a way.
Well, what I focus on with Trigger Points with the book is a method of community-based violence prevention that I think is potentially a very powerful additional tool we can use to reduce these recurring mass shootings that we see in the country. Obviously, we have an enormous problem with guns and gun violence, and there is a long-running political battle over how to regulate guns in our country, but I think many people recognize that we're in a stalemate a lot of the time with that. And as I was looking into this problem starting about a decade ago, I became pretty frustrated with that myself and was asking the question, what more can we do to try to solve this? It's a complex problem in some ways. What possesses someone to walk into a movie theater and shoot 60 or 70 people, or to go into a school and kill first graders? So when I started learning about this method, behavioral threat assessment, and the fact that a number of cases of plots were being stopped throughout the country, I thought that was very compelling, and there's a lot of potential there for ways that we can, I think, leverage this approach.
Okay, so look, the reason, of course, for my skepticism is because our politicians don't seem like they're ever going to do anything about it. There's a massive culture in America of violence and celebration of guns that is inexorably going to lead to massacre after massacre, and it has. And we've had the worst massacres anyone could imagine: children being butchered right in front of our eyes, teachers being shot, Congress people being shot, and still our politicians do absolutely nothing. So, Mark, give me the hope. How in the world?
Well, what you're saying is true in large part at the federal level, namely that we've seen nothing from Congress in the way of legislation. But in fact, at the state and local level over the past decade, there's been a lot of change. The problem is it goes in both directions. There are states that have implemented tighter regulations and done a better job, and then there are many states that have further loosened gun regulations. So until we have a national picture that's more standardized, that's not really a way forward. But again, I think this method of prevention that I focus on with the book, I think is very hopeful, because we have a lot of myths that we tell ourselves. We just keep recycling them about mass shooters, the idea that they're all totally insane and that they just snap and go off the handle as if this is some impulsive act. But that's not true. That's never true in any of these cases. When you dig into them, you see that these are planned attacks. This is planned violence over days, weeks, months sometimes. And they're also preceded by a long trail of behavioral warning signs. That's what this field focuses on. That's an opportunity to intervene. So if we kind of demystify what this problem is and sort of set aside all of the entrenched political arguments that we just keep repeating and try to understand this problem better, there is real hope. I mean, I've looked at a lot of cases in the course of writing this book where threat assessment teams have intervened with troubled people who are planning and plotting violence, and they've gotten in the way of that constructively and helped people steer them in a better direction and away from committing an attack like that.
So, but a lot of these, especially the younger guys, appear to be loners. So how do you find a loner who's sitting there scribbling, their dark thoughts in a corner? I mean, let alone the fact that I think it was in Michigan that happened, where the teachers actually did see it, and then they reported to the parents, and the parents who had just bought him a gun didn't care at all and let him go back into school. So there's just awful right-wing parents in the country who celebrate their kids having guns, even if their kids are unstable. But okay, put the parents aside. A lot of them are loners. So how do you find them?
Well, so Cenk, that's actually another myth that we have about this problem, the idea that these are people who just burst out of complete social isolation and aren't detectable. It's simply not true. There are often people around the perpetrators of mass shootings who are in a position to see the warning signs. Peers, there are many school shootings going back decades, even before Columbine, where numerous kids had a good sense of something coming. And that's true of the case you just mentioned, Oxford High School last November. There were a number of kids who were worried about the perpetrator of that attack. There'd been stuff flying around on social media for weeks, months ahead. There were some peers that he was texting with and sharing videos with. So the question is more about how do we create better awareness of the warning signs and get more of a culture of see something, say something, reporting concerns. So that's how threat assessment cases mostly begin, when somebody's freaked out by a kid drawing violent pictures or saying, hey, I'm gonna bring a gun to school, or saying, hey, don't come to school this Friday because something big's gonna go down. There are many, many cases like that going back in time in the research literature of this work. And so if we understand that better, we have a better chance of getting in the way. The Michigan case is unique in some ways. The situation with the parents there is quite stark. I mean, I've looked at many cases over the years, and that one is about as grim as it gets. So, you're up against it there because the parents aren't helpful. And we don't know the full details of that case yet, which will play out in court, but they appeared to even enable his dangerous trajectory. But then you still have the school system and a potential team in place that could address the threat as well.
But Mark, isn't that another problem? And maybe I'm overhyping it and you've studied it, but if Mark Fullman goes in and says, hey, that kid's got a troubled history and there's guns in the house, we need to be careful and we should alert the authorities. This is a telltale signs, right? If their parents are right wingers, they're gonna go nuts and they're gonna say, how dare you? We have every right to have a gun. We're not gonna let you Gestapo take away our most cherished possession and our precious child. He's white. I can't believe you would say this, Mark. And so what do you say to that?
Well, I understand the point you're making, and politics and families can get in the way and be a real difficult obstacle in these situations. However, whether it's a school or a workplace, a company with, we have many workplace mass shootings in this country too. Institutions, companies, agencies, community organizations have ability to get in the way. They may not be able to go take the gun away from the family, but they can say, you can't be in the school. They can say, we're going to try to get you help. They can try to make a case for potential involuntary mental health hold, depending where you are. I mean, again, we get back to the issue of variation among states. And so we have a patchwork legal system for this too. But there are tools in place already that allow a school system or allow a workplace to deal with a danger. It's not a given that those people can just be around and have access to weapons and wait and see what happens.
I can see how it would help in some cases, but you're going to run into a lot of resistance because people don't just admit that their kids have trouble. And I keep saying right winger, and I'm sure I know you want to make it nonpartisan, but it's all right wingers. And if you try to take their guns away, they'll shoot you. They won't even wait for the kid to shoot you. They'll shoot you. And so it's intractable. And then you make the point about the states. What difference does it make? Today, idiot right wingers are saying, oh, there's a Sacramento shooting, but California has tight gun laws. There's no wall between Canada and Nevada and Utah or any other state. Right. And plus, it's absurd. They could just drive in with all the guns in the world.
Right. Well, so that's the point we were discussing earlier. And I think you're right that, look, We have seen a rise in political violence in this country in recent years, especially from the far right. I've written about that and covered it quite a lot for Mother Jones. I write about it in the book. Another thing that I learned, though, that's really interesting through the research that I did on this field is that there are many cases where attempts at intervention are met with positive response. Not all of them, but in many cases, these are people who need help desperately. They're in desperate situations. They may be depressed, suicidal, angry, but they're responsive to constructive intervention. And there are cases like that both in the workplace and in schools that I chronicle in the book. So there is some hope there. It's not going to happen in every case, but you know, you're right. It's a tough problem.
No, and Mark, don't get my skepticism the wrong way. I'm super frustrated at politicians, but I'm sure what you're saying would help. And by the way, if it helped to stop a dozen mass shootings, you'd be saving an enormous amount of lives, right? Yes. And I believe that it certainly can. And by the way, the FBI does a pretty good job these days of sussing out domestic terrorists. Every time they stop a plot, I give them credit for it, which is, you know, on a left-wing channel saying, hey, look, the FBI is doing pretty well. And so I can see how if you applied that in this situation, it would certainly help some. All right, Mark Fullman, the book is Trigger Points Inside the Mission to Stop Mass Shootings in America. Thank you for joining us, appreciate it.
Thank you.
You guys want to meet a real progressive who has an excellent chance of winning? Good news, I got one for you. Doyle Canning, she's running in Oregon's 4th congressional district, and we're going to explain why she has such a good chance of winning. Doyle, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here with you, Cenk. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So you ran against Pete DeFazio last time. He's the incumbent Democrat, and that district got even more blue in the redistricting. So DeFazio had an explanation for why he's stepping down. He said, it's so blue, you don't need me to protect anymore. Later, he changed his mind on that, which I'll explain to the audience, okay? But he is stepping down. He just changed his mind about how blue the district was, apparently. We're gonna get to that because it's a hilarious hypocrisy. But so I assume since you already ran and you've got a lot of support behind you, and you're doing a lot of grassroots fundraising, the Democratic Party rolled out the red carpet and said, Doyle, you're next in line, because they do next in line, right? And they welcomed you with open arms, right?
Not exactly. It will come as no surprise to viewers of the Young Turks. You know, the Democratic establishment here in Oregon, just like in many states or in the Congress itself, you know, is a very closed circle. And I was in fact told to wait my turn, 10, 15 years. I should wait. But the reality is that our climate can't wait. The IPCC put out yet another report just today showing that it is absolutely imperative, urgent. We are absolutely out of time to transition our economy off of fossil fuels to rescue a stable climate future. That's why I'm running. That's why I'm in this fight. And it's really great to be here with you talking about how we're going to win.
Waiting 10, 15 years is the most nonsensical thing I've ever heard. What happens magically in 15 years from now where you're allowed to be a candidate? And I guarantee you, they'll say, oh, good, it's too late now. So you can run if you like, but you're not gonna win. So they don't want you to run when you can win. Look, Doyle, Oregon is in a lot of ways a very blue state, and certainly in the area that you're running. And there's the image of Portlandia and all of that, right? But if we can't get progressive Democratic leadership in that state, Jesus, what hope does anybody have? So you're telling us that Oregon's Democratic Party is also against progressives, generally speaking?
Well, my opponent in this race, who announced her candidacy within 2 hours, I think it was, of Congressman DeFazio announcing his retirement, you know, has been patronized for many years by the fossil fuel industry, billionaires like Michael Bloomberg, even big tobacco. You know, that is very much how she built her political career, and now she's running for Congress here in a district that strongly favors progressives. This is an area where Senator Sanders in 2016 really romped to victory, double-digit margins in every county. This is an area of the country that has very strong environmental values. Medicare for all polls in Oregon across party lines at 75%. This is an area of the country where we can and must retain our seat in Congress in the progressive caucus and fight to advance Medicare for all and the Green New Deal. Unfortunately, my opponent is endorsed by the centrist caucus, the New Democrats. That's why it's so urgent that the progressive movement get behind my campaign, send contributions, put in the hours on the ground, door knocking, phone banking, whatever you can do to support. This is a race we can and must win.
Yeah, so you have an excellent chance of winning it, and my guess though is, and I'm curious because I really don't know, and I hope I'm wrong about it, but there's no reason in the world where local press in an area that progressive, with the candidate who's more likely to win, that's you, and that it fits the policies better, shouldn't be at least neutral to the race, and shouldn't point out that your opponent is backed by big tobacco, big oil, et cetera, right? But my guess is if they're like the press anywhere else in the country, they probably favor her instead of you.
Well, you make an excellent point. Just last week, environmental coalition spearheaded by a group called Climate Hawks Vote did poll this district and my candidacy, and they sent out a press release about the findings that said the race is undecided. 55% of voters are undecided. The Oregonian took that result and made a headline saying, that my opponent is winning by a large margin. So there you go. This race is very much up for grabs. This is a race that is very unsettled at the moment, and we're running a strong grassroots campaign. First out in the field, knocking doors, doing everything we can to talk with voters. And when I'm on the doors talking with voters, they're saying, hey, we're already supporting you. Or by the time we leave the conversation, they're supporting. So there's a lot of appetite for my candidacy and a lot of grassroots support.
Yeah, I mean, it's classic press. The minute the Democratic establishment tells them they have a favorite candidate, the press feels like it's their job to support that candidate 24/7, no matter what. So when you say they're funded by big oil, big tobacco, I guarantee you members of the press will be more offended that you're saying that than the fact that she's funded by big oil and big tobacco. They're like, oh yeah, of course, you want to kill the planet, kill people? You're awesome. That's a great, hey, you're leading in the fundraising, right? What a great candidate. Oh, you're trying to save the planet. Boo, no. And you're being so rude by pointing out how corrupt she is. All right, which leads us to Pete DeFazio. Because, look, as you might be able to tell, I don't have much respect for Democratic leadership. They know that, I know that. They're not overly fond of me. I'm not overly fond of them. Because they're humiliating and they suck at their jobs. Okay, so that's my opinion. But I had in the back of my head Pete DeFazio as like, I think he's kind of progressive adjacent, right? And it turns out, no. He comes out and after saying he's retiring because the district's plenty blue, he comes and endorses your opponent and says, oh, well, we don't want to lose to a Republican. Wait, I thought you said it was plenty blue, and that's why you were retiring. What a hilarious lie. Like, it's in, by the way, in the article I read, it's in the same article. They're like, DeFazio retiring because the seat is safe. Pete DeFazio says, make sure you don't vote for the progressive because the seat is not safe. So, I don't know, is like, for old school Democrats, are there any of them that were ever progressive? Is DeFazio like a corporate goon and I didn't know it?
Well, look, Congressman DeFazio was a co-founder of the Congressional Progressive Caucus with Bernie Sanders and Maxine Waters way back in the late 80s. That was a long time ago. The district has changed since he was elected to Congress in 1986. That's the last time we had an open primary here. It's 36 years ago when I was in kindergarten. And so, a lot has changed with the redistricting, but also just in the world in the last 40 years. And so, I think it's a good time for a new representative. That's why I'm running. We need a strong champion who is connected to the constituency, who understands the challenges of raising a family in this district today, where we have one of the tightest housing markets in the country. We have the highest rate of homelessness in the country per capita in Eugene, Oregon. And we've lived through these devastating wildfires, heat domes, climate disasters over the last few years. We can't wait for change. That's why I'm running. I'm a strong progressive, have spent 20 years as a community organizer, environmental attorney. I've worked alongside the progressive members of Congress to advance our priorities there. Now I'm ready to do that on behalf of the people of Oregon's 4th District.
Yeah, no, I knew there was a reason why I thought DeFazio was progressive. So because he was back in 1986. And it's just so heartbreaking to see what money does to people. So because I read what he said about you, and it didn't have anything to do with you, Doyle. He's like, oh, progressives, they're not practical enough. What happened to you, man? Jesus Christ, what happened to you? So Doyle, I gotta ask, is voting with 75% of your voters like you would on Medicare for All, is that not practical? Why is that not practical?
I guess perhaps it's not practical if you're cashing checks for your campaign from the pharmaceutical industry, the health insurance industry, the lobbyists who benefit from the status quo. I lost my mom to lupus. She had a chronic condition. She had lost her job, lost her insurance. She died within 2 years. And that's why I'm in this fight for Medicare for All. This isn't some kind of hypothetical problem. This is a real urgent crisis for the people of this country, as you know, as the watchers of this show very, very, very much understand. And Medicare for All is popular, especially in Oregon. 75% across party lines, Republicans, independents, Democrats, everyone knows that we need a universal healthcare system. And why isn't it getting done? Because of the ways that corporate money has polluted our politics in Congress. And that's why I'm in this fight and why I am running to champion Medicare for All. Apparently, it created climate change within Pete DeFazio's mind and changed the climate in there. Anyways, Doyle didn't say any of that stuff. I'm just angry at him for, unfortunately, the transition that he's had. All right, Doyle, I'm gonna guess you're not taking corporate PAC money. That's correct, not a single cent. Okay, well then, which donors will you be beholden to? I'm confused. Well, the people of Oregon's 4th District and progressive activists all over the country. We're very proud. We just finished our first quarter, our first big fundraising deadline. We had 1,300 contributions. We're looking to double that in the next 2 weeks. This election is in 43 days. So this is a short fuse. This is a sprint for our movement. It's one that we can win if we are able to mount the most aggressive and proactive campaign possible. As I said, we're out knocking doors, we're sending mail, we're doing all the things, but we need your support. So if you're watching this, you're inspired, you want to send a climate champion to Congress instead of a fossil fuel Democrat, which we've all seen the ways that Senator Manchin has completely sabotaged the climate agenda in Congress. We cannot afford another corporate Democrat beholden to the fossil fuel industry in the United States Congress at this time with the urgency of the climate emergency. That's why I'm running. If you want to support me, canningforcongress.com. We need your support today. Doyle Canning is an honest person running without any corporate PAC money and is a progressive in a very winnable race. It would be great to have another progressive in Congress. It's totally possible when there's no incumbent, like in Oregon's 4th District. Canningforcongress.com. Doyle, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. You are so welcome. Thank you.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Jake Huger, Ed Experian with you guys. Chris Stanley and Mark Anderson as well. Already people are joining up. What is this? Why? Because Chris and Mark, obviously American heroes. They hit the join button below on YouTube. You can do the same thing. All of a sudden, you're part of the Young Turks, and you're helping to bring both the truth and change into the world. Yeah, I said it. Okay, Casper, we got a big show ahead.
We do.
Yeah, and Anna, you're not gonna believe this, but I'm gonna tell you ahead of time anyway. Today, I fight back against Republicans, and pretty aggressively. Twist.
Huge twist.
Huge twist.
No one could see that coming.
Yeah, well, as you'll see here, there is a little bit of a twist that I'm gonna do throughout the show, so you have that to look forward to. But let's get going. Casper, what's in the news?
All right, we start off with some positive news, actually. So it has to do with the Supreme Court. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is on track to be confirmed as the latest justice in the United States Supreme Court. And this is thanks to a bipartisan effort. What? Now, I don't want to give the Republican Party too much credit because as some of you have already seen, the line of questioning that she's had to deal with, these deceptive, disgusting smears that she's had to deal with from certain members of the Republican Party have been pretty terrible. However, it turns out that 3 Republicans voted along with Democrats to advance Judge Jackson's nomination. Here's what happened. So the Senate Judiciary Committee deadlocked along party lines in an 11-11 vote Monday on whether to send Jackson's nomination to the full Senate. The tie vote forced Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to file a discharge motion to bring the nomination before the full Senate in order to get it out of committee. And guess what? 3 Republican lawmakers, again, voted along with Democrats in order to advance her nomination. So GOP Senators Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Mitt Romney of Utah, and Susan Collins of Maine voted with Democrats. All 3 Republicans will also support Jackson when it comes time to vote on the final confirmation, which again is likely to happen by the end of this week. Not because there's really any urgency other than the fact that Easter break is coming up, spring break is coming up for our very hardworking members of Congress. And so they would like to get this done before they go on break. Cenk.
Yeah, so it is a little encouraging to see like a ray of light in the Republican Party where 3 people still have not lost their minds. And so that's the good news. The bad news is the rest of the Republican Party still totally Looney Tunes. So the reason it got deadlocked in the committee in the first place is because Chuck Grassley joined the lunatics in the asylum. And the reason I tell you that, you probably don't even know a thing about Chuck Grassley, but the people in DC, they've been telling me for years, like over a decade, oh, don't worry about the Republicans going crazy. There's still the old timers who are moderate, wonderful, reasonable people like, and they would always say, Chuck Grassley. So where's he at? Where's he at? And where's all the idiots who push for bipartisanship and say, no, including Joe Biden, by the way. Oh no, my beloved Republican friends are gonna come around. Beloved, okay, look. On the easiest vote of all time, you only got 3 Republicans. She is eminently qualified. No one can reasonably disagree with that. That's why they had to make up the insane thing about the Josh Hawley smears that I don't want to get back into, although we're going to get back into it in a second because we're forced to, because more Republicans are speaking out against it, right? So they invented insane smears against her, and 97% of the Republican Party is all in favor of it. So while I celebrate Romney, Murkowski, and Collins doing the right thing on an incredibly simple vote, don't get it twisted. That is not the majority. That is a tiny, tiny, tiny minority of the otherwise insane Republican Party.
And look, I also want to be careful in regard to giving these 3 Republican senators too much credit because this was really a layup. Regardless of how these Republican lawmakers voted, let's just keep it real. It was very clear that Ketanji Brown Jackson would be confirmed by the Senate simply with the Democrats and only the Democrats voting in favor of her. Manchin came out in support of Judge Jackson, so did Kyrsten Sinema. So there was really no question that she was going to be confirmed. But what do you want your legacy to be remembered as? Do you want to be one of the Republicans who decides to go on the record voting against a Supreme Court nominee who is not only qualified, but is about to make history as the court's first African-American woman? And so for Murkowski, Collins, and Romney, it was a layup. They have presented themselves, especially throughout the Trump years, and even now as the so-called moderate Republicans. I think that the press gave them way too much credit for that because more often than not, while they might have some strong statements against Trump or against the Trump era Republicans, they typically voted along with Trump and the policies that he championed. So I want to make sure that we give the audience that context because it's incredibly important. That said, earlier this week, there were stories coming out regarding Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and how he was urging the Republican caucus to remain united in voting against Judge Jackson. And Romney, Murkowski, and Collins decided to go against the grain here. And so I guess credit where credit is due, but obviously context, full context does matter.
Yeah, it does. And important point about Mitch McConnell before we get to the prime lunatic. So McConnell said that if the Republicans had controlled the Senate, they would not have allowed Jackson to even get a hearing. Lindsey Graham said, that's it, we wouldn't allow a hearing under any circumstance because they don't care that Biden won the presidency. They just want to block him. They don't care about what's fair. Get it through your thick skulls. By the way, if you're in the audience, you all know that already. I'm mainly talking to mainstream media who are like, oh no, I can't tell who's fair and not fair. I can't tell. So Lindsey Graham says, even if the president is a Democrat for 4 years, they would never allow the president to pick a Supreme Court justice. That's obviously not what's in the Constitution. That's obviously grossly unfair. But the press, like, I can't tell. I can tell. I can tell the Republicans are cheaters. They don't believe in the Constitution, etc. But more importantly, McConnell said, look, we would have forced a more moderate pick. In other words, they would have forced Biden to pick a conservative justice. Not fully lunatic like Gorsuch or Alito, but conservative in that there was one available that conservative Democrats like Jim Clyburn pushed for. That judge was totally pro-corporations in every ruling, right? So they would have put another conservative on the court if the Republicans held the Senate. And you know Biden, he would have collapsed immediately and done that. So now the Republicans are going to take the Senate, very likely next time around, because Biden's doing nothing to stop it. So that's it. There's no more. Trump gets 3. Biden will probably get 1 here, Judge Jackson. And that's great news, by the way. I don't want to take away from that either, right? So, but giving you full context. But when the Republicans take over, that's it. It doesn't matter that it's 2 years. They're not going to allow any more Biden picks on the Supreme Court. So wish for the health of all the Supreme Court justices, because the playing field is so uneven. They put in a justice, well, a week or 2 weeks before the election, whereas we will not be able to get a justice 2 years before an election.
Right. I mean, McConnell is transparent about what his objectives are. And what's frustrating is the treatment is not returned in kind. You do not get the same type of treatment toward the Republican Party from Democrats. What you hear over and over again from Democrats, people like Joe Manchin, is the necessity for strong Republicans. That's how our government works. And this so-called desire to work alongside or work with Republicans with this imaginary nonsensical notion of bipartisan legislating and rulemaking. But we all know what that really translates to. It translates to, hey, we're looking for an excuse as to why we keep empowering the Republican Party to carry out pro-corporate policies. And the reason why they do that is because they have the same donors. So while rhetorically the two parties are very different, and obviously when it comes to social issues, they're very different. When it comes to these types of bread and butter issues, when it comes to judicial nominees, they're usually in agreement for the most part in regard to pro-corporate nominees, pro-corporate judges. Look, Judge Jackson, of course, is qualified. I'm happy that she's certainly on the left compared to some of the justices that we have in the Supreme Court right now. But make no mistake, she definitely has some pro-corporate rulings in her history as well, which is why Biden would nominate her, which is why you would have 3 Republicans who would also vote in favor of advancing her nomination. That said, the initial possibility, the first potential nominee that we talked about on the show was far worse. She had a lot more blemishes on her record that were pro-corporate than Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson does. I do want to also just quickly give you a statement from Lisa Murkowski, because I thought what she had to say was interesting. I want to get your thoughts, Cenk. She said in a statement, after multiple in-depth conversations with Judge Jackson and deliberative review of her record and recent hearings, I will support her historic nomination to be an associate justice on the United States Supreme Court. My support rests on Judge Jackson's qualifications, which no one questions. Her demonstrated judicial independence, her demeanor and temperament, and the important perspective she would bring to the court as a replacement for Justice Breyer. She also continues to say, it also rests on my rejection of the coercive I always have a hard time pronouncing this word, apologies, but politicizing essentially of the review process for Supreme Court nominees, which on both sides of the aisle is growing worse and more detached from reality by the year. While I have not and will not agree with all of Judge Jackson's decisions and opinions, her approach to cases is carefully considered and is generally well reasoned. So what I thought was the most interesting there, Cenk, was her willingness to call out just how insanely polarized Capitol Hill is, how both parties seem to be working against each other. Certainly the Republican Party, I mean, it's pretty crazy. But I just think it's easy to make that statement in this context, but I would have liked to see that kind of statement in a different context where maybe she actually ends up emboldening some of the terrible policies that are championed by someone like Donald Trump. It's just interesting that she used it in this context.
Well, so I can explain clearly where the camps are, right? So Murkowski, Romney, and Collins are in the old school corporate Republican camp, okay? And they believe in bipartisanship as long as it's helping corporate rule. And every once in a while, they'll agree to something Democrats want, and Democrats will agree to what the Republicans want that are not strictly part of corporate rule to continue the facade of bipartisanship. Those were the old days, right? And so that's what Collins is doing here. She's saying, I don't agree with everything Judge Jackson says, but she's qualified, etc. It's very old school of her to do that, and that's good in this context, right? Now there's a second camp in American politics, and that's the right wing. And the right wing populists are now frothing at the mouth, and nothing is good enough for them. Judge Jackson is perfectly qualified, and even the other old school Republicans confess to that. And they say, oh, I don't care, she's pro-pedophilia. Looney Tunes, totally nuts, detached from reality, right? But what does Susan Collins do? Because it's the old corporate playbook, she both sides it. They're both getting detached from reality. Really? Which Democrat is detached from reality, and how? No, you're just saying that because you're a Republican and the press eats that up. Oh, yum, 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 yum. No, one side is filled with lunatics. The other side, which is still slightly dominant, but in this election, the right-wing populists might win and wipe away democracy entirely. But the dominant faction is not good either. That's corporate rule, corporate Republicans, and at least 80 to 90% of Democrats are corporate Democrats. They love corporate rule. And then you have the tiny 10% wing in the political sphere for today. In reality, the public is so much more progressive than any of these guys, and I could show it in the polling. But for now, there's about 10% of the Democratic Party that's actually populist left, right? So I would argue, and I could prove with facts, that they're the only sane ones. But for the moment being, these allies of ours, like Murkowski and Romney, that are from the corporate camp, are not, of course, in the long term, our allies at all. We have to defeat corporate rule. That's the oppression that has ruled for the last 40, 50 years, okay? But for the moment being, we need their help in defeating the fascists on the right, because otherwise there ain't gonna be a next election to argue over. So that's your full context. I'll take the vote and thank her for it, Judge Jackson. And by the way, I'll thank Biden too, because Judge Jackson overall is a very, very good judge. And I'll give Biden credit all the way to the end. This is one of the positive things he did. Anna, you're muted.
Apologies. So we've got to take a brief break, but when we come back, we have more news for you, including how Amazon is trying to censor its employees following the successful unionization effort in Staten Island. We've got that story and more when we come back.
Back during the social break here. Elizabeth writes in the member section, woo, I almost never get to view live. Today's a good day. I agree, today is a good day. The Hippie Shake says 3 GOP Senate vote for Judge Brown. That's not bipartisanship, that's tripartisanship. Yeah, well, the 3 is as much as you'll ever get from Republicans on anything. So that's how you could tell this was an absolute layup. Progressive Rock says, is it possible the Biden administration is planning on writing off federal student debt, but is delaying it until just before the midterms to get the best approval bump? No, that is not at all possible. The only way that Joe Biden is going to do that is if we force him to do that. Don't worry, I have a plan. I need you to participate later when we unveil that plan for forcing Biden's hand. But he is not voluntarily gonna write off $1 student debt. The other day, Joe Sandberg made a joke online for April Fool's Day saying, oh my God, the president has written off all student debt, right? And I, like, for a second, I forgot it was April Fool's Day, and I was like, oh my God, we might win. I got all excited about winning in 2024 and preventing Trump and the fascists from taking over, and maybe even having a prayer in 2022. And then I was thinking, what am I thinking? Of course, no, it's April Fool's Day. I was like, there's no way Biden would have the courage to do what he promised. Let alone, he promised $10,000 in write-offs. Doing the whole thing, it would be a brilliant stroke of politics. So that's why it has a 0% chance of being done by the, generally speaking, morons in charge. Okay, Charles Devin Wilson says having strong Republicans isn't how government works. The government isn't working, and in large part, that's why. And do you ever see Democrats talking about, hey, we need strong Democrats in office? No, they're always like, we need pitiable, pitiful, grotesquely weak Democrats and really strong Republicans. Hey, you're supposed to be in the Democratic Party, Joe Manchin. You're supposed to be in the Democratic Party, Joe Biden. You're supposed to be in the Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi. All 3 have said how they wish and fantasize about really strong Republicans taking them. Well, they have over and over again. Twitch, just here for the free drinks, gifted 5 subs, thank you. Drink.OJ gifted 2 as usual, thank you. Moms for Hot Hassan Piker writes in, thanks for keeping it real, TYT. I've been with you guys since 2016, but I guess it's been 6 months since I commandeered my hubby's Bezos account. This mom appreciates you guys. We appreciate you back. Way to do that to your husband. Just kidding, kind of. Skittlebutt Dragon gifted a sub, thank you. All right, I'm out of time, I'll be right back. All right, back on TYT, Jank, Anna, Ryan L, Kenny Turner, and Bull Freaknot, all with you here. Those 3 just joined, just became American heroes. We're gonna bring truth to this country, and we're gonna bring positive change to this country, and we're all gonna do it together. Thank you for hitting the join button below the video on YouTube. Everybody else, you can go to tyt.com/join and be part of the effort here as we retake the country. And yes, we're definitely gonna do that. Wesley Oliver, by the way, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate your generosity. All right. Anna, what's next?
All right, well, let's talk about the Supreme Court nominee and the fallout following a bipartisan effort to advance her nomination. So, Marjorie Taylor Greene has decided to attack Senate Republicans who actually voted in favor of advancing the nomination of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. She was nominated by Joe Biden for the Supreme Court. And it turns out that Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and Mitt Romney voted in favor of advancing her nomination. She's very likely to be confirmed as the newest Supreme Court justice by the end of the week. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene has decided to use a tried and true method of smearing these Republicans as pedophile supporters. So let's take a look at what her tweet said. And remember, this is a woman who is good friends with Matt Gaetz, who is under investigation by the DOJ for possibly having sex with a minor and paying for her travel across states. Now, Marjorie Greene says Murkowski, Collins, and Romney are pro-pedophile. They just voted for KBJ. Again, we're talking about a woman who has nothing to say about what Matt Gaetz is being investigated for. But the pedophile smear is just the perfect tactic for right-wingers, both politicians and voters, who want to go after someone they don't like. And this is exactly what she's doing here.
And she's going after Republicans. So there's no limits, there's no rules anymore, there's no nothing on the Republican side. It's total open warfare against everyone. So, but look, normally the saying goes, two can play at that game, but not in America. Democrats can't play at that game at all. Democrats are always saying, oh, it's so hurtful, we're so offended, boo-hoo-hoo. Like Cory Booker, about Judge Jackson. He's, in response to all of this, he was like, this really hurts and it's very hurtful. No, Cory, you're not supposed to cry in politics. You're supposed to punch them back and have them cry and talk about how Cory Booker is hurting their feelings. Okay, no, but Democrats cannot play at that game, so I'll do it for them, okay? Marjorie Taylor Greene is constantly doing events with Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz is accused of having sex with underage children. So I guess that makes Marjorie Taylor Greene pro-pedophile. And she did that with an actual person charged with actually having sex with someone who's underage, and after he was accused of that. And she went on a tour with him. So she's on a pro-pedophilia tour. Okay, that's Matt Gaetz, but that's not all. The Republican Party's littered with pedophiles. Remember their former House Speaker, Dennis Hastert, got busted and convicted of molesting young boys. That's who Republicans are. They have no morality. They have no decency at all. Those are facts. Jim Jordan, current Republican, accused of knowing about child molestation as he was a coach, a wrestling coach, that another coach was doing, and he didn't do anything about it. All the former students said, oh yeah, Coach Jordan, he knew, and I guess he didn't mind because he's pro-pedophilia. And Marjorie Taylor Greene has no problems with Jim Jordan because she's pro-pedophilia. But one last one, their big daddy, Trump, I'm gonna say it every time now. Trump said about Jeffrey Epstein, the worst child pedophile in American history, that he was, quote, a terrific guy. And he said about him once, he's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. So when did Trump know that Epstein was a pedophile? When did he know it? And why didn't he say anything to the authorities? Instead, he bragged about what his friend, the pedophile, used to do with young girls. He bragged about it. Marjorie Taylor Greene, you support Donald Trump. There is no question factually that you are pro-pedophile based on your record of support for people who clearly either engaged in pedophilia or rhetorically proudly boasted about their pedophile friends. Those are facts, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm sick of the Republicans doing smears without anybody fighting back with actual facts.
Yeah, and not to add like another 10 minutes to this conversation because it's so abundantly clear that she's full of crap. But remember, Trump also, during a press conference following the arrest of Ghislaine Maxwell, who groomed teens and found young women to be essentially raped by Jeffrey Epstein, Trump wished her well at a press conference. I wish her well. Okay, that's their guy. That's the person that Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Republican Party overall supports. So look, I remember all of these Republican lawmakers who were later outed as gay, which I have no problem with. But the ones who were later outed as gay tended to be the ones who spoke the loudest against the gay community. And it's just really interesting to see the projection taking place right now among the Republican Party as they smear others as being pedophiles. The ones who use that phrase, that word the most, just pay close attention to the company that they choose to keep.
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I'll add just one last thing. For all the QAnon people, is it possible that the Republicans tricked you into bashing the wrong party? Knowing that their leader celebrated pedophilia, and even on TV when he was president, when Ghislaine Maxwell along with Epstein, the worst child molesters in American history. He said he wished her well. And then they accuse the Democrats to throw you off the scent. When it's the fact that Republicans are pedophiles, not all of them, but their top leadership, Speaker of the House, head of the Conservative Freedom Caucus, the president himself, one of the leaders in Matt Gaetz. Well, if they wanted to keep doing pedophilia, QAnon followers, what would they do? They would have you attack the wrong people while they're doing it out in open. So think about it, okay? I'm just asking you to think about it, and then you tell me why you support all those people who are clearly and obviously pro-pedophilia. Wait a minute, if you're part of QAnon, are you pro-pedophilia? Because if you support these monsters, it certainly seems that way.
All right, well, let's move on to our next story. Amazon is now looking for ways to censor its own employees following the unionization win of Amazon workers in Staten Island, New York. Now, how are they planning on doing this? According to internal documents reviewed by Ken Klippenstein over at The Intercept, they're planning on doing it through their internal messaging app, which is likely to be rolled out by the end of this month. Amazon, according to Klippenstein, will block and flag employee posts on a planned internal messaging app that contain keywords pertaining to labor unions. An automatic word monitor would also block a variety of terms that could represent potential critiques of Amazon's working conditions, like slave labor, prison, and plantation, as well as restrooms, presumably related to reports of Amazon employees relieving themselves in bottles to meet punishing quotas. And so there are lots of words included in this internal document. And apparently this issue came up as the executives and managers were having some sort of meeting about how to roll out this app, what kind of features it's going to contain. Following a meeting about the internal messaging app, an auto bad word monitor was devised, constituting a blacklist that would flag and automatically block employees from sending a message that contains any profane or inappropriate keywords. In addition to profanities, however, the terms include many relevant to organized labor, including union, grievance, pay raise, and compensation. Other banned keywords include terms like ethics, unfair, slave, master, freedom, diversity, injustice, and fairness. Even some phrases like "this is concerning" will be banned. It's just like, where are the Republicans claiming that the corporate world is too woke? Where are they? Where are they? I want to know where they are. Where are the free speech warriors who spend literally all day on Twitter crying about how censorious the left is? Let's have a conversation about this type of censorship that is very likely to take place as they roll out this internal messaging app. By the way, will their workers even have time to engage in chats with their colleagues as they're dealing with these crushing quotas? So much so that they have to urinate in plastic bottles? Just curious.
Anna, that is an excellent question. And I had not thought about it in that context, to be honest. That's literally a list of canceled words. I mean, you want to talk about political correctness. You will not be allowed to say factually correct things. By the way, including, I've got to go to the restroom. Right, because those words have been canceled by a corporation. The number of Republicans you will see complain about that is zero. We're predicting ahead of time. All those guys pretending to be populist. Oh, we're taking out corporations and Disney is woke and those other guys are bad. Okay, where are you at? This is to protect the average American worker. Where are you at, Republicans? None of them will ever criticize Amazon for this. You know why? Because they're corporate America's bitches. All those liars like Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, when push comes to shove, they're kissing the ass of corporate America, and they're not actually gonna do anything about the workers. Higher wages, they hate the idea. Protecting American workers, they despise the idea. Do you understand? All those right-wing populists don't mean anything other than, they're talking about race. I don't like to talk of race because I'm a racist, I don't like it. All they are is hate and fear. In terms of actually protecting their own voters, they would never do it. They would never, ever do it. Instead, every one of them will be licking the ass of Amazon, even though they're doing the most political correctness you've ever seen.
No, I mean, 100%. Right-wing populism it starts and stops at them throwing hissy fits over some, random Black Lives Matter sign that a company might post somewhere within the building, outside the building, which, by the way, everyone, including the left, knows is nothing more than pandering, doesn't really mean anything. If you actually care about people's lives, including the lives of your Black employees, for instance, maybe improve the working conditions, maybe stop firing them when you find out that they're actually trying to organize a union. But of course, the right wing is not at all interested in improving working conditions, or more importantly, ensuring that there's some equilibrium of power within these corporations to ensure that workers are empowered to protect themselves, to protect their wages, to have better working conditions. The right-wing politicians are not in favor of that. But I do want to draw a distinction, because there are certainly right-wing voters who want better working conditions. I mean, you look at various strikes that happened in this country quite recently, like the strike that happened at John Deere. You think that all those workers are on the left? No, they're not all on the left. I'm sure there's plenty of conservative workers at John Deere who took part in that strike, and they demanded better pay, better working conditions. But there's a reason why Republican lawmakers, corporate funded Republican lawmakers, run away from these types of discussions, because they're not about economic populism. They're not about empowering workers. They're about serving their corporate donors, something that we talk about on the show often. But I want to get to some other pretty hilarious statements coming from Amazon about this internal messaging app, because, well, what's the point? What is the point of this app, especially since it's going to censor its own employees? The major goal of the program, Amazon's head of worldwide consumer business, David Clark, said, was to reduce employee attrition by fostering happiness among workers, and also productivity, of course. Yeah, a great way to support or emphasize happiness among your workforce is to treat them well, and to not censor them, and to not fire them if they're conversing with their colleagues or coworkers about potentially organizing. There's more. They plan on making their employees happy through shout outs, because, I mean, who wants bathroom breaks when you can get a shout out? So shout outs would be part of a gamified reward system in which employees are rewarded virtual stars and badges for activities that add direct business value, documents state. At the meeting, Clark remarked that some people are insane star collectors. I don't know about you, Cenk, but I think you're messing up, bro. Like, you're not gamifying how well we're performing on our jobs, and I would like some virtual gold stars to feel better about that. Workers don't want that. Workers want better working conditions. They want to be compensated fairly. That's what they want. And they want to ensure that they're not going to get fired if they're having conversations about organizing.
Yeah, by the way, you could also do both. You could say nice things about your employees and give them good wages and give them good health care, right? My guess is if they're weighing things, they're going to prefer the wages and they're going to prefer the healthcare, right? But then give them a gold star. Great. Gamify. I enjoy gamifying, right? But it's not in lieu of, it's not in substitute for actual good wages, healthcare, and being decent to your employees. When you gamify and you give credit, and the credit doesn't have to be through gamification. When you give credit to people, it should be heartfelt as opposed to a trick, so that you trick them into being appeased and not actually paying them.
Totally.
But that's exactly what these guys, and they think they're so smart, what these executives are doing.
Final thing I wanted to remark on is, look, Amazon and other major corporations are panicking because there is this, effort to organize among workplaces, and it's something that we haven't seen in this country for many, many decades. And so Starbucks is also panicking because various stores are also attempting to unionize. Some have already been successful. So they brought back their former CEO, Howard Schultz, to serve as CEO for the third time. And the reason why they brought him back is because he has been one of the most effective union busters. In fact, recently he had this town hall style meeting and he addressed the efforts to unionize. I thought the way that he worded it was just fascinating. So let's take a quick look at that.
Here's where it gets a little sensitive because I've been coached a little bit, but I do want to talk about something pretty serious. We can't ignore what is happening in the country as it relates to companies throughout the country being assaulted in many ways by the threat of unionization.
Assaulted. They're being assaulted, Cenk. They're being assaulted by that threat. It's just hilarious. By the way, I should note that about an hour after that town hall, Starbucks fired a Phoenix-based barista, Layla Dalton, beautiful name by the way, a move that was seen as retaliation for her involvement in union organizing at the store where she worked. Last month, the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, issued a formal complaint against Starbucks for disciplining 2 employees, including Dalton, for working to unionize their Phoenix shop. Cenk.
Okay. Starbucks last year made $4.87 billion in profits. When the executives kept all of that and the shareholders kept all of that, the workers didn't say they were assaulted by Howard Schultz for keeping the money. But when the workers say, hey, can we also get a part of your $5 billion in profits? I'm not a guy who says that it's black and white, that the workers are the only ones who should get the money and the executives are useless. But the executives do say that about the workers. They say, oh, the executives are such geniuses, they deserve hundreds of millions of dollars. But the workers, they deserve the bare minimum, okay? I think that it makes sense to have a fair apportionment. And in order to get a fair apportionment at a giant company like Starbucks making $5 billion in profits, you would need a union to organize the workers so they have leverage. That's not assaulting anyone. That's saying, hey, we all made a lot of money through our hard work here today. The workers did, the executives did. Why don't we share in those winnings that we created together? Howard Schultz, because you're assaulting my money. Come on, man, you have, how many billions do you have, Howard Schultz? Don't give me this nonsense about assaulting Starbucks. All right, one last thing, guys. I need you to understand that you can tell who's the good guys and who the bad guys are and who's faking it and who's not. Ro Khanna and Bernie Sanders pushed Amazon, for example, to do $15 minimum wage. And they battered them until they won and Amazon conceded and got all those workers. You work at Amazon, you're getting $15 an hour now. Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna put money in your hand, food on your family's table. They got your wages up and significantly so. You know what the Republicans did for you? Nothing, zero, ever, okay? And do not confuse Republican tools, fear and hatred, for their goals. Their goals have always been the same: help the rich and only the rich. And they prove it every day by their action and inaction.
Absolutely. Well, you do not want to miss the next story that we're going to do when we come back from the break, because turns out that the party that claims to be so concerned about things like child sex trafficking and pedophilia is working pretty hard in states like Tennessee to do away with age requirements for marriage. We've got the details on that story and more. Don't miss it. We'll be right back.
Oh, you said a bad word.
back on TYT. I want to thank Elizabeth. Elizabeth Reyes just joined by hitting the join button below. Elizabeth, you rock, and thank you for being with us as we boldly go forward, trying to bring real news and positive change to America. Mr. Shadow writes in on YouTube Super Chat. Got to make a correction from yesterday. I stated that Jordan Peterson said that only Republicans are alpha males. I was wrong. I meant Jesse Lee Peterson. I'm sure they both think that crap is true. But Anna, the thing that I love about that though is that even our audience corrects itself. We all care about facts.
No, you guys are the best. We have the best audience in the world. I don't care, bar none. Like, I don't want to have a conversation about other audiences, okay? You guys are number one. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for that update. Because I want to be informed too, right? So I want to make sure I don't later cite that Jordan Peterson made that statement when really it was Jesse Lee Peterson, who I like to watch Jesse Lee Peterson's show just for shiggles.
Yeah. He's king of shiggles.
He's king of shiggles. Lots of fun.
He's purposely nuts. Beta. That's him. Okay. So anyways, I love that you corrected yourself. Guys, no matter what your ideology is, facts are non-negotiable, okay? The minute you start playing with facts, you're gonna get detached from reality like the right wing did, okay? And yes, you guys are definitively the best audience. For example, Jimmy Dore has been attacking the left nonstop for a couple of years now, never, ever, ever criticized the right wing. His audience didn't even realize it. To this day, whoever's left, that considers themselves left, they didn't even notice that Jimmy never criticizes the Republican Party. That's so sad. So I'll take you guys every time, 1,000 times over. Frankly, the Sharp Slicer adds to our day with a poem. He says, Jake and Anna always look great. I like this poem already. Even when Anna has COVID-8, JK, got my third vax here in Wyoming before a real spring and the jackalopes start roaming. All Repobos gotta go or fascist waters will flow.
Oh my God, Repobos it's lit. We're gonna use that from now on. Repobos, come on.
Yeah, I guess assume that's a combination of Republicans and hobos. Repobos. Okay, it sounds like either a cuddly or an unfortunate animal. Anyways, Matt Hudgens-Haney says Romney, Collins, and Murkowski should not be thanked at all. They only cross the party line when their votes cannot change anything. It's all an act. It's fair to point out their votes would not have mattered here. BO says once the SCOTUS pick is in, we can finally boot Manchin and Sinema out to go join the Republicans where they belong. That's a really good point. God, you guys are so smart. We gotta wait on that vote, and then afterwards we can actually do an assault politically on those two. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Casper.
Let's take a little trip over to Tennessee. Republican lawmakers in Tennessee are proposing legislation that's meant to be hateful toward gay people. They want to establish common law marriage as being between one man and one woman. But what's interesting about their proposal is that it does away with any age requirements associated with marriage. Just a few years ago, we covered a story about all these red states that allowed adults to marry literal minors, people under the age of 18. And turns out that Tennessee was one of the states that finally did something about it. This was a few years ago. But now this proposal coming from Republican state lawmakers indicates that their common law marriage can only be defined as between one man and one woman. And if you're a 16-year-old girl who's dealing with sexual misconduct or sexual abuse from an adult, they'd be able to, marry you with no problem. Again, because of the way this legislation is written. So the bill's sponsor, Tom Leatherwood, said the law being considered would add a new marriage option for Tennesseans. All this bill does is give an alternative form of marriage. This is how goofy these people are. Alternative form of marriage for those pastors and other individuals who have a conscientious objection to the current pathway to marriage in our law. Missing from the bill, though, are age requirements, opening the door for possible child marriages, something the bill's sponsor acknowledged during a Child and Family Affairs subcommittee. There is not an explicit age limit, Leatherwood said. So look, lawmakers are sometimes stupid, okay? Like they'll write legislation, you gotta be super careful because the way you write it might have certain loopholes that allow for bad behavior. So when I was initially reading about this story, researching the story, I thought to myself, I mean, they just outlawed child marriage a few years ago. This must be like, a mistake. Maybe they forgot to include some sort of provision that made it abundantly clear that they don't allow child marriage. No. Leatherwood's like, yeah. I mean, there's no age requirement, not a problem. He says this. So one person actually did speak out against it before we get to more from Leatherwood. So State Representative Mike Stewart, who is a Democrat from Nashville, says it's basically a get out of jail free card for people who are basically committing statutory rape. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. So that's another reason why this terrible bill should be eliminated. So again, two massive reasons why. Number one, the whole point is to be anti-gay. Number two, it allows for child marriage, and the sponsor, the person who wrote the legislation, knows it and has no problem with it. By the way, according to UNICEF, approximately 300,000 girls and boys in the United States were married before reaching 18 years old between 2000 and 2018. Under current Tennessee law, one can get married as young as 17 years old, but you'd have to do that with parental consent. In 2000, by the way, the state issued 1,256 marriage licenses to 16 and 17-year-olds, including 1,094 to 16 and 17-year-old girls. In those cases, the oldest groom was 26 years old. So,
okay.
Leatherwood, real good guy, real ethical, good Christian, he just wants to go back to the days where 16-year-olds were married or forced into marriage to 26-year-old adults.
Or by the way, 12-year-olds or 8-year-olds, the law doesn't have any limit at all. So now guys, this is really important. He was given an opportunity to correct that mistake if it was a mistake. And apparently he doesn't think it's a mistake because he didn't correct it and acknowledges it, not gonna correct it. So he thinks 4-year-olds can get married in Tennessee. That's the kind of monster he is. 4-year-olds. Babies, are you gonna marry babies? I don't know, they're Republican monsters. QAnon, you've got the wrong party. So I understand that in the old days, people in different areas got married at younger ages. I understand that. I understand the historical context, and that included the South. The South constantly was marrying, younger girls, very, very young girls, girls we consider to be very underage now. That was a tradition in the South, filled with right wingers. Okay, but we don't accept that anymore, unless I don't know. Maybe QAnon and the Republican Party are going to say, "Oh, we're just kidding. We love it when older men marry or have sex with younger girls." Because that's not our policy, we hate that policy. That is the Republican policy in Tennessee. So are you against it or are you for it? I don't know, you tell me. QAnon, do you believe anything that you say? Forget the reality, forget the real world, but the things that you guys claim. Here it is, it's happening in Tennessee. Up and at 'em, get into action. Nope. So you never meant it. All the Republicans, Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about how Romney, Murkowski, and Collins are pro-pedophilia because they voted for Judge Jackson. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene, you're not speaking out about the legalized pedophilia that Tennessee Republicans want to do. So I guess that makes you pro-pedophilia. So look, it's not my policy, it's your policy. So what are you going to do about it? Look, on the issue of gay marriage, that's obvious. That anyone who doesn't realize that Republicans are against gay Americans having the same rights as straight Americans is either obviously lying, Dave Rubin, or just doesn't know anything and just wandered out of the woods, like doesn't understand. It's the Republican Party that is passing laws against the LGBTQ community every single day, including, I don't think they should be allowed to get married. I don't think they should have the same rights as straight Americans. So by the way, all those Republicans who believe that, it's okay, you want to live in a theocracy and you want to go back to the medieval ages and all that. So I get it, that's fine, it's your right. I believe in freedom of speech, it's a free country, let's vote, let's see how it turns out. But you don't get to say you're American. America is for equality. They didn't say except gay people in the Constitution. You should read the Constitution. I know you never have and you never will because you bathe in your ignorance. But every time you strike out against the gay community, you're saying, I hate America. I don't believe in the idea of equality. And now though, you really don't even have to get to it. I mean, look at that, 300,000 babies married off in the last 20 years or so in this country. Underage kids married off. In mass, QAnon, in mass, 300,000 of them. And the Republicans say, yes. So who's a pro-pedophilia party? Because right now, the facts clearly indicate it's the Republicans.
Well, why don't we move on to our next story? Because it turns out that there's yet another religious person, in fact, someone associated with Ron DeSantis who got caught in a sex scandal of his own.
Last week, a pastor in another state contacted me with information about one of our deacons involving a sinful act that took place many years ago in his past before he was at Calvary. Many years ago, a member of our deacon body committed sexual sin that could also be described as abusive. Now, I want to be careful here because we do not want this information to cause any harm to the victim or other innocent people. It did not involve criminal charges, and he has never been identified by law as a sexual offender. Nevertheless, it was a terrible sin, and it devastated people's lives.
That was Pastor Willie Rice out of Florida, and he was addressing Ron DeSantis's faith advisor, who has since stepped down after, well, you just heard it in the video, there was word of this deacon, the specific individual, engaging in some sort of scandal that forced him to step down. Now, there wasn't much specificity in this announcement, but there was a report from 2005 in the Tampa Bay Times, which will give you some idea of what this is probably about. But first, some context. Jeff Ford of the Florida governor's Faith and Community-Based Initiative was recently dismissed from his role as a deacon of Clearwater's Calvary Church after it was revealed he had a history of sexual misconduct when he was a teacher. Now, again, there wasn't much specificity in the announcement, the video that you just watched, but here's what we know based on a 2005 report out of the Tampa Bay Times. They reported that Jeff Ford resigned from J.W. Mitchell High School at the age of 27 because he was in a relationship with one of his students who allegedly at the time was 18 years old, and since she was 18 years old, he wasn't charged with a crime. If she was underage, of course, he would be charged with a crime. But since he was a teacher who was engaging in a relationship, an intimate relationship with an 18-year-old, he was essentially fired from that school. And it's unclear whether this is the particular issue that's come up again, and if this is the particular issue that's forced this deacon to step down. Jeff Ford, by the way, is the executive director of Man Up and Go, a Christian nonprofit in the United States and overseas, whose authentic masculinity program teaches men to be protectors of and providers of their families, according to the biography of Ford posted on the website of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. According to the website, Ford is a member of the state's faith-based and community-based advisory council. And Cenk, before I go to you, I would like to hear a little more from Pastor Rice. Let's watch.
It was a terrible sin, and it devastated people's lives. After this brother's deep sin, his world crashed. After this event, he experienced, as his own testimony has consistently stated, a genuine conversion to Christ. He repented of his sin. He trusted in Christ. And he was baptized as a true follower of Jesus. By God's grace, his marriage survived. And several years after that, he came to Calvary. And he did not hide his story. It was a part of his testimony, and it was a story of God's amazing grace. Because of our brother's past, we did not allow him to serve in ministries to children or students but he did become involved in other areas of our church life. And over the course of many years, he demonstrated, as much as we are able to judge such things, the genuine fruits of a repentant life.
So you guys knew about this scandal when you hired him and had no problem with it until now when you decided to dismiss him. But don't worry, Cenk, he got baptized. He's now living a real repentant life. It's totally fine. Oh yeah, and by the way, I forgot, his marriage is allegedly doing okay. He was married at the time that this affair with an 18-year-old happened.
Yeah. Look, I would be surprised if that story of the 18-year-old is the only thing that was in that guy's life. Since they're not saying what it is, it does open them up to conjecture, okay? So here's what I know. Guys who talk about authentic masculinity programs don't often have it, okay? Here's another thing I know. When you say man up and go, it's another red flag for, okay, I'm trying to overcompensate here. But the most disturbing, that organization that this guy led, quote, was to inspire men to fight for the fatherless as Jesus commands. And then they mainly worked as a nonprofit in Uganda, Ethiopia, and the Dominican Republic. That's got red flags all over it. Number one thing that groomers do is they look for powerless people who have no defenders. And we've covered other stories before where kids that are fatherless are a giant neon sign to abusers. Come here, there's no one to protect them, and you could do whatever you want. So until they tell us what he actually did, I have to assume that it's way worse than they're letting on. But even if it was just what they said, Ron DeSantis currently has on his faith-based and community-based advisory council a man who his leader, the leader of that pastor, the one you just saw, said committed sexual sin that could also be described as abusive and that devastated families. So Ron DeSantis, what are you hiding? What kind of freaks are you hiring to be so-called faith leaders? Is it a deep state operation to try to actually get deeply sexually abusive priests into official government positions so they could do more abuse? I don't know, because they won't say what the guy's crimes were. We know of one instance where he did something, but they seem to know something way, way worse, talking about sexual sins that were abusive. So what did he do? What does Ron DeSantis know, and when did he know it? And why is this guy still on his board? Seems like a pro-pedophilia position. That's what it looks like to me. Look, the Republicans are constantly projecting, oh, I bet there's pedophilia happening in a basement somewhere in a pizza shop. Really? Why don't you look at your own faith-based group? I don't know, you tell me. You're the one constantly prattling about pedophilia, yet all of a sudden, while you're distracting people with Democrats and pizza parlors, look at your own faith-based group. What did this monster do? By the way, I believe in repentance. So maybe it was just the teacher-student relationship, just that he slept with his, and I put just in air quotes, that he slept with his student. If that's the only thing that happened, you should clear the guy's name. And I mean, it doesn't clear his name, but right now, the way they're hiding what he did sounds way, way, way worse. And of course, the person helping him to cover up is Ron DeSantis, because that's the kind of pervert and sick man that he is.
Well, that does it for our explosive first hour, but stick around because hour two is just as, if not more explosive. We're gonna start off with an insane campaign ad that JD Vance just put out. You don't wanna miss it, come right back.
Florida's ground zero for God's waiting room.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was too strong coffee? Yes, new twostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at twostrongcoffee.com/TYT.
That's 300 million. That's a pretty good number. Well, that's the size of the U.S. population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world. We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks has just passed another milestone. 20 billion views. Damn. All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Rob Shively. What do you know? Rob says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me, or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Jenkins Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce, 1971, saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right? Wow, man. I can see the void.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable. Senator Sanders, welcome to Rebel Headquarters. Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted. Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
Here's what we do. We go beyond the headline. We are willing to engage in transparent conversations with those who do not think like me. We also make sure that you know what's happening not only nationally, but in your local area. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Lots of news to get to. Let's do it.
All right, JD Vance, unfortunately, is still in the news. Let's talk. Republican candidate JD Vance, who's running for a Senate seat in Ohio, decided to put out this insane 30-second ad. Let's watch.
Are you a racist? Do you hate Mexicans? The media calls us racist for wanting to build Trump's wall. They censor us, but it doesn't change the truth. Joe Biden's open border is killing Ohioans, with more illegal drugs and more Democrat voters pouring into this country. This issue is personal. I nearly lost my mother to the poison coming across our border. No child should grow up an orphan. I'm JD Vance, and I approve this message because whatever they call us, we will put America first.
Okay, so there is no open border policy. In fact, Biden continued with Trump's policy of banning asylum seekers from entering the country, citing COVID as the reasoning behind it, which of course it had nothing to do with stopping the spread of COVID. Our country performed very poorly when it came to containing the virus and also ensuring that people are vaccinated and all of that. But that's beside the point. There is no open border policy. So let's get that out of the way. The other thing I want to just mention, Democrat voters are pouring into the country. Yeah, that's how it works, because undocumented individuals in the United States allegedly have voting rights, and they could just lie. He could just lie. But obviously, Cenk, I'm not addressing the elephant in the room. Do you hate Mexicans? Me too.
Yeah.
And then he goes on with this like anti-immigrant, anti-Mexican rant, all while fear-mongering about them, allegedly causing crime, funneling drugs into the country, which by the way, what happened to all that funding for Border Patrol? What happened to Trump allegedly successfully stopping the flow of drugs being smuggled into the country? Turns out he didn't do so well with that, did he? Didn't do so well. I mean, aren't we supposed to have secure borders that are supposed to prevent the smuggling of all sorts of bad things across the border, like meth, like heroin, whatever drug that he wants to fearmonger about in that ad? What happened?
Yeah, so I was confused by the question because I didn't know whether he wanted the audience that he's trying to appeal to answer yes or no. He's like, are you racist? It sounded like it was like a solicitation. Are you racist? Do you hate Mexicans? Then come vote for me. I'm JD Vance. And I took my hood off so you could see my face. This is what I look like under my hood. Are you also Klan? Come vote for me. Now you say, well, hey, no. He doesn't mean that. He means it's outrageous that they're being called racist. Then later in that ad, and it's only a 30-second ad, he said they're trying to bring in Democrat voters. So you think every Latino immigrant is going to be a Democrat? Why do you assume that? It looks like you're making a blanket assumption based on their race. Funny how that works. And then you're saying that Ohioans are getting killed by those same Latino immigrants. Getting killed. Gee, I wonder why we call you a racist and think you hate Mexicans when you just told everybody in Ohio, oh my God, those Mexicans are coming to murder you. And they're all gonna vote for Democrats because you know how they are, right? Oh, golly gee, I don't know where you got race into this from. By the way, just so you know, Anna's got more receipts in a second, but natural born American citizens are 4 times more likely to commit crime than a new immigrant to this country. 4 times more likely. So the people killing Ohioans are Ohioans. And so there is no basis in reality for what he's saying. The only reason he says that stuff about crime is because he's a racist. JD Vance, go cry about it, make another ad. Are you saying I'm a racist just because I'm racist against Mexicans and I hate them and I think they're gonna kill you even though we're the ones actually killing you? Yes, that's what I think, JD. And in fact, we're gonna show your nonsense story about your mom too. So yeah, I'm coming after you on that too. So, but Anna, go ahead with more receipts.
I think the American people deserve an answer to this very important question. When are we gonna stop Ohioan on Ohioan crime?
That's right, there's something wrong with their culture. There's something wrong with Republican culture. Right-wing culture in Ohio is getting people killed.
And by the way, let's take a look at the statistics because I don't know if you guys know this. I mean, look, geography is not my strong suit either, but believe it or not, Ohio does not share a border with Mexico. In fact, if you look at the demographics in Ohio, a whopping, according to the 2021 census, a whopping 4% of Ohio, 4% is Hispanic or Latino, and only 4.6% are foreign born. So Ohio, lily white. And we need to know, when are we gonna stop this white on white crime? When are we gonna stop it? When are we gonna stop it?
It's killing Ohio.
According to JD Vance, there's a lot of problems in Ohio. People are killing each other.
Anna, you're absolutely right. The Ohioans are getting killed because of the culture in Ohio of right-wing violence. And so I don't know when it's going to be stopped. I'm sure JD Vance is going to do his next ad about it. But give us more details, because I want to get into his nonsense claim about his mom and tell you who actually tried to kill her.
So if you take a look at what's actually killing Ohioans, it's similar to what we're seeing in many, many other states. It's actually heartbreaking, it's terrible, and to use the kind of political tactics in talking about it, it just shows you how little interest JD Vance and Republicans like him really care about solving this very real problem. The top issue that's killing Ohioans, one of the top issues actually, is drug abuse, opioid drug abuse to be specific. Ohio has the 4th largest opioid involved overdose deaths per capita in the country, per capita. So you're looking at a map, if you're watching us either on TV or online, and the areas that are a darker shade of red represent the parts of the country where the opioid epidemic is at its worst. It's killing the largest numbers of people per capita. And so Ohio's up there, as you can see, it's dark red. And Vance apparently has no criticism for the pharmaceutical companies that got Americans addicted to these painkillers to begin with. And it doesn't matter, he's gonna continue exploiting the tragedy of his mother for his campaigning purposes, while completely ignoring the corporate fueled problem, the pharmaceutical fueled problem that we're seeing not just in Ohio, but across the country.
Yeah, so JD Vance is a sick person who's using his mom as a political ploy and a prop. His mom did not take any drugs crossing the border by those dangerous Mexicans. If she did, on top of what we already know, then JD Vance should make that clear. Oh, by the way, my mom actually got drugs, meth or whatever it is from a Mexican drug dealer. Be honest about it, tell us what it is. But of course, he's not gonna say that because that's not what happened. What happened to his mom is clear, and he's talked about it before. It was painkillers that she got from a pill mill in Ohio, okay? Those are drugs made by American pharmaceutical companies. JD Vance is in that crowd of extreme right wingers who are like, oh, the big drug companies, I don't trust their vaccines, man. You should go die instead of taking their vaccines. Oh, the opioids that nearly killed my mom, I love it, not gonna do anything about it, okay? As a Republican, in fact, I'm gonna misdirect your anger and say it was the Mexicans who did it, not incredibly rich right-wing drug company executives. You're lying about your own mom's health problems and you're blaming it on Latinos. That's the kind of sick, racist, ungrateful son you are, using your mom like that. Why don't you actually fight the drug companies that got her addicted in the first place? Oh, you're too busy taking their money, right? You sicko. I'm tired of these Republicans. No one should tolerate how deeply immoral they are. They're a party of craven immorality, not only against their fellow man, but they would sell out their own moms just to get a couple more racist votes. That's exactly what JD Vance is doing. That's the kind of monster he is.
Well, let's move on to other monsters within this party. A lot of terrible Republican stories today. But I want to talk about the issue of gender, which of course is a fan fave among the Republican Party. All right, so Republicans seem inclined to put forward their own weird definitions of what qualifies as a woman. And so first we have Madison Cawthorn, you know, that young Republican congressman who said that Republican colleagues invited him to cocaine-fueled orgies. Well, he's weighing in on this during a debate on the House floor. Let's see how this all went down.
Take notes, Madam Speaker. I'm about to define what a woman is for you. XX chromosomes, no tallywhacker. It's so simple.
No tallywhacker, which is the word that he, I guess, likes to use to describe the male genitalia, otherwise known as penis. You could just say penis, but he's doubling down on the right-wing campaigning strategy of choice, which is to kick powerless people when they're already down. And in this case, it's the transgender community. Before we get to Marjorie Taylor Greene, though, Cenk, curious what you think about the word tallywhacker. Do you allow it, or would you like to dismiss it?
I don't care at all. Look, the overall thing is LGBTQ community, they despise you. The Republicans despise you. Any vote for them is a betrayal of everyone that you love and care for, including yourself. So if your beloved tax cuts are worth it, Peter Thiel, Dave Rubin, and other sellouts, then okay, all right, you value money more than your own rights, and you think, I know, I'm rich, I'm not gonna get affected by this. It's for people that aren't as wealthy that are in my community. And they won't come for me, the fascists won't come for me. Yeah, I know a lot of people made that calculation before and turned out to be a massive mistake. But on the issue of tallywhacker, I don't give a damn what he calls it. I'm much more interested in the Marjorie Taylor Greene part of this story. So let's do that, Anna.
All right, let's watch the video.
What is a woman? Because she said she's not a biologist. I'm gonna tell you right now, what is a woman? This is an easy answer. We're a creation of God. We came from Adam's rib. God created us with his hands. We may be the weaker sex, we are the weaker sex, but we are our partner, our husband's wife.
I don't think that women are the weaker sex. I don't think men are the weaker sex. I think that men and women have their own strengths that they bring to the table. But right-wingers do in fact see women as weaker. They see them as second-class citizens. And all this happens. I mean, look, Cenk, it's so clear that they see women as second-class citizens. Look at what they're doing in an effort to punish them across the country if they engage in sexual activity that is not meant for the purposes of reproducing. They want to punish.
Yeah.
I mean, women have been treated as second-class citizens by Republicans for a long, long time in this country. So that statement doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, no, I actually want to thank Marjorie Taylor Greene for the clarity. So now it's super clear. So if you're a woman out there and you think you're the weaker sex, and your job is mainly to serve your husband, great, you vote for Republicans. And I don't begrudge you at all. That's just your view of humanity and of being a woman. I'm not a woman, you're a woman, you get to make that decision. If you raise your hand and say, I am weaker than you, Cenk, and then go vote for Republicans. But you must say it first. You must say, I am weaker than Cenk, then go vote for a Republican. Because I'm a man, okay? I don't think women are the weaker sex at all. I think that's insane. I think lunatics think that. But if you're a right-wing woman, I need you to say it first. I am your superior. Say that I am superior to you, then go vote for a Republican. Every other woman, go vote for Democrats. Or vote for anyone else, but don't vote for these monsters whose stated goal is to declare you the weaker sex. You'd have to be out of your mind to agree to that.
Yeah, look, I just think it is funny watching Republicans fumble as they're trying to use various talking points, because like what she's trying to do there is she's trying to specifically like define women as a way of dismissing or rejecting transgender women, right? And one of the other talking points that you will often see from Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene is this argument that respecting the gender identity of transgender women is an affront to so-called biological women, women who were born as women and still identify as women. So it's just really, really interesting because on one hand, she'll be like, yeah, I mean, it's just wrong. It's wrong because what about, natural born women? It's super disrespectful to them. What about their rights? And then at the same time, they'll make arguments like this, where they insult all women by referring to them as the weaker gender, the second-class citizens. It's amazing, it really is.
Okay, again, you can get with this or you can get with that, okay? I'm not the one making the decision for you. So if you say, I'm just a vessel for my husband, I'm a useless person otherwise, I mean, I'm the female gender, my main role is to serve my husband, then go vote for Republicans. I think that's a crazy position. I say you're not here just to be a vessel of someone else or to serve someone else. I think you're here to live your life with all the same rights that men have. I believe in equality because I'm an American. But if you don't agree with that, that's totally okay. Say, Cenk, I am here to serve my husband because without my husband, I'm useless. I'm useless. I'm just a vessel to please my husband. Go ahead, go vote for a Republican. Say it first, then vote for a Republican, okay? If you don't believe that, then why would you empower people like Marjorie Taylor Greene to go and say that on your behalf? You're putting her in power. It's not theoretical, guys. It isn't a movie. It's real life. They make laws in Congress. They're going to make laws like this, and they are already in different states. In places like Texas, they're enslaving the women, and the government, the jackbooted thugs of government tyranny are saying, we now control your body. You no longer have any rights over your body. Men control your body. And by the way, don't you dare try to leave the state. So now they're passing laws in different places saying that if you're pregnant, you're not even going to be allowed to leave the state. You're going to be a prisoner of the state. If you like that, vote for Republicans. If you think you're a woman and you think, I mean, my body shouldn't be my own, men should control my body. I love big government that tells me what to do with my body, and because I am the weaker sex. Great, vote Republican. You can get with this or you can get with that, okay? And here's where it's at. So women, we are on your side. We believe in equality. But if you don't even have enough faith in yourself that you think you're just here to serve men, great, there's a whole party built for you. It's called the Republican Party. Have at it, Hoss.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Matt Gaetz engages in more kabuki theater, more performative politics. Don't miss it.
Tallywhacker.
Back on TYT. Let's go to members first as usual. Eclectic Miscellaneous says, best audience ever for the best host ever. I read it that way because there's periods between each word. Thank you, we appreciate it, brother. Don't shoot, I'm the goalkeeper says, Jeff Bezos literally a supervillain. Lex Luthor's got nothing on this guy. If you saw one of the last movies in that comic universe, Lex Luthor is on a giant yacht, and that's where he conducts his business. We've done stories now about how Jeff Bezos has a giant yacht. By the way, in the movie, the character looks identical to Jeff Bezos because Bezos looks like the original Lex Luthor, and then he acts like the original Lex Luthor. It's amazing. I don't know if they have any self-awareness at all. They just walk right into it. Okay, next thing you know, a Republican's gonna have like 8 robotic arms. He's gonna be like, what? That's a Spider-Man villain. Another one's gonna be made of sand. He's gonna be like, what? I don't get it. Anyway, Kid tested Politburo approved said, didn't have Cenk saying, quote, lick the ass of Amazon on my TYT bingo sheet for today. Shoulda. That too. Tina writes in, the majority report, Emma, revealed that Romney reported that Biden reached out to him to support Judge KBJ, but that Romney was never ever contacted by Biden to support or at least consider voting for BBB. Says a lot about Biden and how committed he is to his progressive agenda. I have more.
I don't want to hear about Build Back Better ever again. I just don't want to hear about it. Okay, let's just note it for the record and move on. Democrats were never serious about it. They never wanted it, with an exception of a handful of progressive lawmakers. That's it. That's the truth. Let's stop pretending like it's anything other than that. I know that the comment agrees with what I'm saying here, but like nothing triggers me more than conversations about Build Back Better. It's gone, it's dead. Democrats have squandered everything because they're funded by corporate donors who don't want social spending programs to pass. That's it, that's all it is.
Yeah, that is indisputable. Romney was never in favor of Build Back Better, and I know that for a fact. So Enhancer 420 says, ever notice the Republicans always accuse Dems of what they themselves are guilty of? Love the show, love Anna, keep up the great job. That's from Twitch, and you're absolutely right about both Republican projection and admiration for Anna. Okay, we move forward. Van Vicious writes in on Super Chat, a woman made from a man's parts. Is Eve a transgendered woman? Ooh, I love our audience. I never thought of that. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna use a great job, Van Vicious. Way to be. Okay, Subliminal Sapper says you can't quote demographics to the right wing. Their argument has a built-in invisible boogeyman. They are illegal and undocumented. It's built to be unprovable, so you can't refute it with facts. Well, that describes the entire Republican position. They don't care about facts at all. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. There's so many great comments in the super chat. I'll get to them in the next social break. Anna, more news.
All right, let's watch Gates's performative politics.
This is the most capable, the most combat credible force in the world. It has been, and it will be so going forward.
Not if we continue down this path.
To do that.
Not if we embrace socialism.
The fact that you're embarrassed by your country. By
no. I'm embarrassed by your leadership.
I'm sorry for
I am
that.
not embarrassed for my country.
That was just a snippet of the exchange between Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin during a hearing about the Pentagon's budget, the very budget that Matt Gaetz has voted in favor of several times. Important detail as we give you more details about this story. Now, Gaetz has accused Austin of pushing wokeism and socialism in the military. Let's just note for the record that the military is funded through taxpayer money. It is not privately funded. So I guess in a way, the socialism point is correct. But again, Matt Gaetz has voted in favor of that in 2022, 2020, 2019. Interesting. Seems like Matt Gaetz is a proponent of socialism. Now, in his questioning, Gaetz referred to an article published in the conservative Washington Free Beacon in February that reported that economist Thomas Piketty, whose work focuses on economic inequality, would give a lecture at the institution about the case for global justice and democratic socialism to combat China. Austin said he was unaware of the lecture that Gaetz was talking about, prompting Gaetz to retort that it was widely reported. The Florida Republican then asked the Pentagon chief if he agreed that socialism was not an effective way to combat China. Austin tried to seek clarity on the question, but then Gaetz pivoted to say that he noticed the United States has been blowing a lot of calls lately on matters of strategy, which is fascinating because I think Biden's actually done a pretty good job with Ukraine. His unwillingness to implement a no-fly zone, his unwillingness to send troops to Ukraine specifically, those were good choices. And obviously with the support that the Ukrainian government is getting from the West, including of course the United States, they have been able to provide a fierce opposition, fierce resistance to Vladimir Putin and the Russian troops. But I mean, these are facts. And remember, Matt Gaetz is just engaging in kabuki theater to give his voters the illusion of legislating and working hard for them. In reality, he does nothing. Cenk.
Yeah, I have a twist in this story. I actually think that the severity with which Matt Gaetz questioned the defense secretary is not a bad thing. I think the defense secretary should be challenged aggressively, and the defense budget should be challenged aggressively. But as usual, Matt Gaetz, doesn't mean it, and Anna already proved it. He always votes in favor of the bloated defense budgets that he does theatrics against.
There have been a few times that he has voted against it, but the latest National Defense Authorization Act for 2022 this year voted in favor of that, also voted in favor of it in 2020, voted in favor of it in 2019. Like he has voted in favor of the defense budget multiple times. Yeah. And Cenk, I just want to be clear, he had absolutely no interest in grilling Lloyd Austin about government waste, defense spending, coup orchestrating. That was not the line of questioning here. The only thing he wanted to do was present himself as an anti-woke warrior, and that's it. It's all performative. I have no problem asking tough questions in any context of anyone in a position of power. We've given lawmakers a lot of credit when they've done it in the past. I mean, we talk about Katie Porter quite often when she's grilling someone during these House hearings, but this ain't it. This is nothing more than performative garbage that's meant to attack the left for wanting to create a more inclusive environment for people.
Okay, on the other hand, I'm so tired of Democrats and people in the administration, et cetera, going there and bowing their heads. So Austin fought back a tiny bit, and everybody made big headlines about it. We'll get to that in a second, okay? No, you should fight back super aggressively. So when he says, oh, did you know that this lecturer was invited to this educational institution related to the military to talk about socialism? Austin should say, no, I didn't know that. You picked a random lecture. Do you want me to know every lecture at that institution? That doesn't seem like a great use of my time. But more importantly, what did you want me to do, Congressman Gaetz? Did you want me to cancel him? It sounds like you're in favor of cancel culture because I didn't cancel a speaker and I wasn't against his freedom of speech. It looks like you want to try to take that out on me. But I'm an American, Representative Gaetz, and I'm here to defend America. And in America, we're not afraid of a conversation and a dialogue, even if it's about socialism. Are you afraid of that, Representative Gaetz? Is that why you'd like me to cancel that speaker? But of course, since Austin works in a Democratic administration, he's gonna do like 2% of that and then be considered a hero, right? No, go and kick their ass. It will be appreciated. Now, by the way, to Anna's major point about Gaetz, the Pentagon wastes trillions of dollars every year, and you know that, okay? Not every year, overall. Billions, easily hundreds of billions wasted, thrown in the garbage every year. Literally, they will make weapon systems, they'll make fighter jets, they'll make submarines and go, oh, well, it didn't work. It cost a couple $1 trillion, but it didn't work. Throw it in the trash can, we all got rich anyway. Are you challenging them on that? No. Critical race theory? Okay, is that what's wasting trillions of dollars? No, it's the defense contractors that have bribed all of your colleagues. You want to be a tough guy, Matt Gaetz? Let me see you call out Republicans on the bribes they take from defense companies. Oh, you're not gonna do that because you're full of crap.
Yeah, so why don't we go to some more of this interaction because Gaetz is about to attack him in all sorts of insane, nonsensical ways. And by the way, I've got no love for Lloyd Austin. I think Lloyd Austin is one of the worst cabinet picks for Biden because he's got cozy ties and a long history with private military contractors. With that said, though, this was a perfect opportunity to ask legitimate questions and do legitimate grilling of someone in a position of power. Gaetz squandered that opportunity because it's not about actually serving the best interests of the American people. With that said, let's watch.
We're behind in hypersonics. We failed to deter Russia. Last year,
so what do you mean we're behind in hypersonics? How do you?
Okay, who's ahead in hypersonics?
How do you make that assessment?
I don't know. I make that assessment because China is fielding hypersonic weapon systems and we are still developing them. I make that assessment because Russia actually used one. By the way, your own people brief us that we are behind and that China is winning. Are you aware of the briefings we get on hypersonics?
I am certainly aware of briefings that we provide to Congress.
But it's not just the hypersonic, it's all over the world. It's in Taiwan, where China's last year flew more sorties than ever before. It's North Korea, on pace to shatter prior records, the number of missiles that they are testing. And so while everyone else in the world seems to be developing capabilities and being more strategic, we got time to embrace critical race theory at West Point, to embrace socialism at the National Defense University, to do mandatory pronoun training.
CNN reported on Monday that the United States successfully tested a hypersonic missile in mid-March, but kept quiet for 2 weeks to avoid escalating tensions with Russia as Joe Biden was about to travel to Europe, according to a defense official familiar with the matter. This was reported on Monday this week. I mean, Matt Gaetz knows, he knows. So look, I don't really care about those hypersonic missiles. I don't care if they did fail. And I don't care if our hypersonic missiles failed while China's succeeded. Like this arms race that Republicans are like super thirsty for, and corporate Democrats, to be fair, are also thirsty for, is not something I'm interested in, supporting or being in favor of. This is money that gets wasted toward military weaponry that is not meant to really keep us safe. It's meant to fatten the pockets of the defense contractors who end up getting a redistribution of wealth from our taxpayer money into their corporations, into their pockets. Like the fact that we're like, oh no, but actually, no, we actually succeeded in testing these special missiles. I don't care, don't care. We did succeed, but still don't care.
So, and it's even a tiny bit worse than that, because what he's pushing Lloyd Austin to do is to spend more money on defense. So what he could have done, and by the way, are there any Democrats in Congress? Why aren't you challenging Lloyd Austin on legitimate grounds just as aggressively? Oh, but that would hurt the feelings of the Biden administration. Wow, I care a lot about that. So Lloyd Austin worked for defense contractors. Matt Gaetz, why didn't you question him about that? The same contractors who wasted trillions of dollars of taxpayer money. Instead, you want them to waste more. You want them to waste more. So if you're a right-wing voter, understand Matt Gaetz thinks you're stupid and thinks, oh yeah, if I just talk about race, all my voters are racist, and they'll get distracted. And we'll all still keep stealing all of that money. We'll fund it all to defense contractors, and I'll have all this great theatrics about, oh, I am against you, Lloyd Austin. Spend more, take the taxpayer money and just throw it in the garbage, burn it, but mainly stuff it into my pockets, right? Meanwhile, theatrics. But if you're a right-wing voter, you got a choice. You could prove them right and go, oh yeah, I am dumb, and all I care about is race. And if they're taking my money and handing it to defense contractors, and totally and utterly, basically robbing me, I love it. I want to vote for Matt Gaetz again, as long as he's talking about race. Okay, that's up to you. Be a Republican, go for it.
Well, for now, why don't we take a break? And when we come back, we've got more news for you. We're gonna lighten things up by discussing how Russian influencers are very hurt. They're fired up over the fact that they can no longer purchase Coco Chanel. We've got that and more when we come back.
All right, back on TYT. So first, programming notes. Everybody check out our podcast network. It's not a big deal, but it's kind of blowing up, okay? It's got shows on there that that are not necessarily video shows, like the Bituation Room with Francesca. If you're out and about, it's a great way to listen to all of our shows. And our goal is always to be #1 on all platforms. So does that mean we're coming for the top podcasters? Goddamn right we are. Okay, so check wherever you get your podcast, check it out. Okay, and then we got a new series for our members. So go to TYT.com. It's called Visions of a Post-Neoliberal Future. It's from the New School, okay? and it's wonderful speakers, including episodes 1 and 2 are up. Our own Nina Turner is one of their guest speakers, and you'll see it under shows. Okay, and episode 3 is coming next. And of course, make sure that you're watching Watch List. That's JR's show, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. And then one last one, guys. Make sure you're checking out Progressive Candidates on tyt.com/canvas2022. Canvas 2022 if you want to find out where the best progressives are in the country. All right, now I'm going to super chat as I promised you guys. Chaplain Fred, AKA Prayer Dragon, wrote in, hi, Cenk and Anna. Greetings from Poland border. My Wi-Fi is not good and it's late. Thanks to TYT fam for the prayers. Ukrainian people are awesome. So one of our own, one of our members, who by the way used to be conservative, started watching and now is a excellent progressive, and is now over in Poland helping Ukrainian refugees. That's exactly the kind of religious person that I love, and shows you the positive side of Christianity and religion overall. Ray Russell wrote in, regarding Jimmy Dore's audience, had a guy in a comment section tell me he agreed with everything Dore says, even though Dore is a leftist and he's a conservative. I asked him to think about what he just said. Okay. If Jimmy's saying every single conservative position, are you sure he's a leftist? Okay, it's such an obvious grift. It's the grift that keeps on giving, at least to Jimmy's pocketbook. Bull Freaknut says, does Amazon outsource their IT, or are their IT people not trying to unionize? I think that the IT people would easily be able to get around their stupid rules without corporate knowing. Well, that's certainly true. They'd be the ones running the apps, but I don't know if they're unionizing. Desiree DeWitt writes in, Anna, my fur baby died Saturday morning. The way you talk about Charlie always made me smile because I so relate with your bond, and you and Cenk are a much needed distraction right now. All right, back on TYT. Real quick, Wind Spirit Feathers on Super Chat said, great old school last night. What about Atlanta? Got to give the LA of the Southeast some love. Actually, Waz did mention them in our City Wars. So thank you for watching though. We love old school. Members, you can check it out anytime. tyt.com/join. Make sure you're getting all the old school episodes. And Anna, I know you were gonna say something to Desiree because her dog passed away, and you got cut off.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to do that. We ran out of time during our break, but Desiree, my heart goes out to you. I mean, I feel so terrible. I can't even imagine what that's like. Charlie's really my first dog, and I read a story yesterday that actually brought me to tears because there was a hiker who had gone missing for 2 weeks, and his body was discovered recently, and he had gone hiking with his dog. His dog survived and didn't leave his side. And so when people ask like, what's up with dog owners? What's up with pet owners who are like so obsessed with their pets? Like, I can't emphasize enough, like there's a bond, there's a friendship, there's companionship. Like, I got Charlie at a time when I was like super depressed, and he was like the first step in helping me kind of get out of that really, really bad place in my life. So Desiree, my heart goes out to you. Thank you for sharing your story with us. And it's gonna take some time, but I hope you feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's do more news.
All right, my favorite kind of story, rich people whining about not getting things that they feel entitled to. So, while civilians die in Ukraine as a result of Putin's invasion into the country, turns out that wealthy Russian influencers have something else on their mind. They're concerned about how these sanctions are impacting their ability to buy luxury items, including Chanel. So in a recent story reported by Fortune, apparently Chanel has decided to stop selling their items to Russian influencers as a result of these sanctions. Chanel now has a new policy to comply with new luxury goods rules imposed by the EU and Switzerland. The luxury house now prohibits the sale, directly or indirectly, of luxury items to any natural, legal person or entity in the Russian Federation or for use in the Russian Federation. Now, before we get to these influencers whining about it, I want to be clear about my take on these types of sanctions, I guess, or these types of rules. Like, come on, like, I don't really care about Russian influencers being able to buy Russian goods, like luxury goods from Chanel. Like that, I don't think that those kinds of rules really change anything. Also, sanctions apparently not hurting everyday Russians the way that we thought it was, especially if they still have thousands and thousands of dollars to spend on Chanel. But I want to be clear, like I don't really care about their ability to buy Chanel or not. Like I don't think that that kind of sanction matters. Go ahead, Cenk.
I actually disagree. I love it. I can't get enough of it. And I think that.
But these are just like social media influencers.
No, Anna, it's not true. And so here's why I say that. Because they're spoiled little kids and they're gonna go home and cry to daddy. Daddy, I can't buy Chanel bags anymore. Oh, it's because you're murdering Ukrainian citizens. Daddy, I wanna buy Chanel again. Can you please stop murdering Ukrainian babies? And that creates pressure within the family. I'm not kidding. They don't care about Ukrainian citizens at all. They don't care about their lives, but they do care about their goddamn Chanel bags and they do care about their yachts. Take it all, take it all. And they can cry all they want about, what is it, Russophobia? Shut up. We love the Russian people, the ones that are reporting on Putin, the ones that are protesting Putin. Russians are, guess what? Humans, of course. This isn't against the Russian people, this is against the Russian oligarchs. And if you're buying Chanel bags over there because you're a Russian influencer loaded up with oligarch money, I love that you can't buy your goddamn bags.
All right, well, let's hear a little about their whining. You have Anna Kalishnikova, a Russian socialite and influencer, who posted on her Instagram account on Sunday accusing Chanel of Russophobia in action. She's concerned about McCarthyite smears, Cenk.
Anyway, I bet she is. Aaron Monte is gonna fall in love with her.
She said she hadn't been able to buy a pair of earrings and a bag at a Chanel outlet in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. She even took out a line out of Putin's propaganda playbook and accused Chanel of being an agent of German intelligence. She says, Since I often come to Dubai for Fashion Week, Chanel managers recognized me, approached me and said, "We know that you are a celebrity in Russia, and we know that you will take your purchases there, so we cannot sell you or your brand items," Kalishnikova said in her post. She said the experience reminded her of how Coco Chanel was not only a mistress of a Nazi, but was a fascist agent.
Anna, can I just ask real quick, this Kalishnikova lady, then why did you go to buy their bags in the first place? So you say that they were Nazis and you're crying about not being able to buy their bags. I know, logic not required, okay? And I'm sure Gray Zone's writing the article now about Ukrainian war crimes against poor Russian oligarchs who are trying to buy Chanel bags. I'm sure of it, but calling someone a Nazi after trying to buy their goods and complaining about it, probably not the most logical argument you could make.
But look, to be fair to Kalishnikova, and we need to be fair, okay? We're fair and balanced here at TYT. She is a smoke show. I know it's inappropriate. I'm not supposed to comment on smoke shows, but come on, we got smoke show. Cenk, don't comment on this. Save yourself the trouble. Let everyone come after me, okay? Moving on.
No, seriously, that's the first time I'm seeing her, but I couldn't care less. Okay, there are many attractive women in the world, and if she can't buy the exact kind of jewels she wants, and she thinks that her not being able to buy luxury goods is Russophobia. You know what's Russophobia? When Putin imprisons Russians for speaking their minds. Okay, that's actually an attack on the Russian people. You and your Russian oligarch friends can go kiss my ass.
Ooh,
actually,
Jake,
you know what though?
Coming with the tough language today.
I know, but you know what? I'm sorry, I changed my mind. I have sanctions against Russian oligarchs. You will not be able to kiss my ass. Okay, so there you go. You're gonna cry over that next.
Okay, can I just say real quick? I think part of the reason why I don't care so much about them being able to purchase luxury items like Chanel goods is because I guess you're right. And I see the world through my lived experiences, my own preferences. I have my own like worldview. And for me, the thought of throwing any kind of temper tantrum for not being able to buy a Chanel item, it's like, it does not compute. Like I don't even understand having the resources and the ability to buy those items and wanting to do it in the first place, right? So, it just reminds me of the show on HBO, The Gilded Age, where it's like wealthy people like wondering if they're going to be invited to the ball. Am I going to be invited to the ball? And they do all these tricky pizzicky like strategic moves, like to be accepted into society. Whereas I'm like, please don't invite me to your event. Like I want to stay home. You know what I'm saying?
So I do, but Anna, you're absolutely right that you're doing projection. For them, this is devastating. In fact, I'm going to read a graphic. There's a couple of ones later. So another one of these women, Yana Rudokoskaya, complained as well. She said she's a show producer and wife of Alexander Plushenko, an Olympic figure skater, is horrified but does not believe it is Putin's fault that she's now deprived of her favorite brand. Over the years, she spent more than 1 million euros at Chanel, so she commented the ban was, quote, somewhat humiliating. See, Anna, for them, this is like a mortal blow. What will they do without their Chanel bags? So for us, it seems like what earthly difference could it make? For them, that's life or death, because they value themselves based on the property that they have, because they're shallow, indecent people. So when you take away their property, their feelings get hurt, and for the first time, they might think, oh, should we be murdering all those Ukrainians?
Yeah, look, but there is, I think, an important point to make as well about what the public opinion is toward, like, because look, I think that we're making a mistake. Actually, no, you're making a mistake in thinking that these sanctions are gonna pressure these individuals to force Putin to do something, right? To change his invasion strategy, to like withdraw from Ukraine. But I think oftentimes what happens with some of these sanctions is it solidifies the hatred and also the belief that everything is the US's fault or the West's fault, right? I'm suffering from these sanctions not because Vladimir Putin is committing war crimes in Ukraine through his invasion of Ukraine. I'm suffering from these sanctions because the United States hates us. They're Russophobic, they're doing McCarthyite smears. Blah, blah, blah. This is Western chauvinism. You get what I'm saying?
I do, but no, I don't believe it. So we showed on the yesterday's show that there's a poll out, 83% of Russians still supporting Putin. So I get it, right? It's not, even though the average man in Russia is suffering more, their patriotism has kicked in. He's pushed all the right buttons. He controls the media. I understand all that, but honestly, that never mattered. Putin was never, ever going to listen to the Russian people. He doesn't care about them at all. There's about a couple of dozen oligarchs that have real power, okay? And those oligarchs, yeah, they can say, oh, Russophobic, and they can say all that propaganda, but they know that that's not true. They're relatively intelligent people. And they know that Putin is the one costing them money. Hear me now, quote me later. Enough of their spoiled little kids coming home and going, oh, Daddy, I didn't get my Prada. And soon, and more importantly, their billions being flushed down the toilet, because that is what's happening right now. And there's gonna be consequences. So let's see, maybe I'm wrong, and Putin is just stronger than all of the oligarchs combined. It's possible. But I think the oligarchs at some point are going to be really, really pissed that they lost tons, untold billions of dollars because of this invasion.
So speaking of the oligarchs, I'm 100% in favor of sanctions that impact them directly. And there has been the seizure of a mega yacht belonging to one of these Russian oligarchs. I want to give you the details on that right now. So the United States and Spanish officials announced the seizure of a 255-foot mega yacht known as the Tango in the Spanish port of Palma de Mallorca on Monday. The yacht, worth more than $90 million, belongs to Russian billionaire Viktor Vekselberg. The United States Justice Department said in a statement, the ship reportedly boasts both a swimming pool and an outdoor cinema with 7 luxury cabins. The Tango is large enough to accommodate 14 guests and a crew of 22. And by the way, there is a video of FBI agents seizing the boat, which is really fun. That's what you're watching as we speak. Just to give you some more background on this individual, Vekselberg is also the Russian billionaire who has famously dropped a fortune buying Fabergé eggs. In 2004, he spent roughly $100 million buying 9 Fabergé eggs. This is what rich people do, okay? When they tell you like, no, we can't tag, they're job creators. No, they're buying eggs, okay? They're buying eggs. Instead of paying their workers or paying their taxes, they're buying eggs, people.
Yeah, no, I love the yacht seizure. Can't get enough of it. Because don't think like us, think like them. Because we're trying to influence their behavior. And what do they care most about? The money, Lebowski. They're obsessed.
Fabergé eggs and designer bags.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right, okay? How much would I pay for a Fabergé egg? Assume that it's, forget the market value. If whatever the market value is, yeah, I'd turn around and make money on it. But if you forget the market value, I paid 0, I don't care. I don't care at all. Those guys, he was trying to impress Putin. Okay, now great, because by bringing the Fabergé eggs back to Russia, because they were originally made for the Tsar of Russia. Okay, great, Putin is impressed. Congratulations, now we have your yacht, so kiss our ass. No, sorry, again, you're banned from doing that. Okay, I know you want to, but you can't. So every Russian oligarch and their family members crying is a great day. And because it means there are going to be less Ukrainians killed, we hope, eventually. The ones I care about are the bodies we saw on the streets yesterday. Their hands tied behind their backs, executed in the streets by the Russians, okay? Those are the people I care about. If you're not getting your Chanel bags and your yachts, I couldn't be happier. So Russian oligarchs, go home and cry about that. All right, we got.
I could not. Never mind. Go ahead, Jake.
Sorry.
I did not nail that.
Okay, post game for the members, the craziest Trump person you've ever seen, even crazier than the Space Force lady. TYT.com/join, or if you're on YouTube, hit the join button below, and we'll see you there in a minute. Well, the Young Turks, the Friday show is gonna be awesome. We're gonna help you drop it. We became the first ever daily online web television show.
No, the Constitution is the very core of America. The fact that we don't spy on American citizens, that we get a warrant, that we go to a judge, that we have a procedure, that we have due process, that is America.
On top of that, they go, why don't they just stay at their own schools? You gotta realize something. These schools